Awesome, awesome. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We're gonna go ahead and get it started. My name is Kristen B. I am a performer. I'm also the director of Sofar Baltimore, and I'm also part of the artist community management team at Sofar Sounds. And we're just so grateful to have you guys here with us, sparking off or being a part of your virtual Pride celebrations and festivities. So I'm excited to be in conversation with some amazing artists, some amazing creatives, and just chat about the experiences, share some stories and some resources, and just discuss, what we all can do to help uplift the LGBTQ community and just some pride happenings. So before we get into all of that, and before I introduce our amazing panelists, I just want to get some housekeeping things out of the way. So on your screen, if you want to pop in the chat, there is a chat button at the bottom. Make sure that in the blue little button, it says all panelists and attendees so that everybody can see what you're sharing. Also, when we're in the chat, we want to just make sure that we're remembering that this is a supportive space. So keep that in mind. And you can, chat out where you're from. If you're, feeling connected to whatever we're talking about, all of those things. However, if you have questions, we have a separate space for that. So there's a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. So if you have any questions that come up during this webinar, just throw it in the chat. We have some amazing moderators that will help us funnel through and answer those questions towards the end of our chat. So with that out of the way, I am going to open up the floor for our amazing panelists to introduce themselves so that we can kick this off. So feel free to take it away.
I'll go ahead. Hey, thank you so much for having me. I love you so much, Kristen. It's lovely to look at your face. I'm so happy to see you. My name is Patience. I am one half of the duo BOOMCLAK. My other half is over there somewhere in the, I don't know where I'm pointing because everybody sees things differently on Zoom. But the one with the tree right there. And we are in a duo called the Peace and Body Roll Duo BOOMCLAK. We performed at Sofar DC, Sofar New York, and we are excited to be a part of the Sofar family. We have been performing for 8 years together. Woo! Now we have been, we've been BOOMCLAK for 8 years this year, and we have been performing performing individually for years before that. And we have, been working for a long time, but I'm excited. I'm a vocalist, I'm a poet, I'm an actress, I'm a writer, and super excited to be here.
Yes, and yes. Hey, Patience. All right.
What's up, everybody? My name is Asha Santee. I am the Boom of BOOMCLAK. Patience is right below me on my Zoom. And I am a producer, drummer, visual artist. I do what I want to do when I want to do it, pretty much. And it's a blessing, and I'm super happy to be here. As Patience said, we've been a part of the Sofar community for years now. And it's so awesome to have one of our favorites on the Sofar team so that we stay even more connected. So happy Pride, and we're super happy to be here.
Yes, and yes. Thank you, Asha. Last but not least.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
All right, so I'm trying to navigate this. My internet's a little slow, acting weird. But anyway, my name is Kenneth Something is what I prefer to go by. My pronouns are all pronouns. Anything you throw at me works for me. And I am a spoken word artist. First, I am a member of Sons of Baldwin, which is a SGL spoken word collective, and who travels and performs poems, intentionally trying to look at the intersectionality between Blackness and being SGL. The other hat that I'm going to mention is that I'm the former executive director for the Pride Center, which is what used to be called the GLCCB. And so with that work, which is the organization that started Pride in Maryland. And so I've worked for years helping to organize Baltimore's Pride in that capacity. And I travel the country. I'm also a national slam champion. So those are all the things I'll throw out there.
Yes, and yes. Welcome to everybody. Such amazing talent and expertise on this call. I'm just excited to be in the room. So let's kick this off with the first question I have is, you know, pride is such a big topic and it means something to everybody, and everybody is kind of individual in that thought process. So for you guys, what does pride mean to you, for you? If you shed light on that for us.
Well, for me, pride personally just means freedom. Being able to, even if you don't walk in a parade or participate in events, like that pride is ultimately within you. And even if you haven't had a chance to come out yet, pride is also permission to walk, even if it's your first time, to talk, even if it's your first time, in that light. So it's freedom and permission for me.
For me, when I think of pride, I think about rebellion, I think about uprising, I think about intersectionality. I always think about the Stonewall riots and how pride is more than just a parade, right? Pride is like an uprising. It started as an uprising, and I always think about creating safe spaces. Like if a space is not safe for you, then you create your own and you do your best to tear down the systems that are already in place. So when I think about pride, I just think about, like, I don't know if I can cuss on here, so I'm just gonna say mess stuff up. So I think about like messing things up really, and just like going against what we are taught and what we know, and creating safe spaces for us to be free in our whole selves, whether that looks like a party, whether that looks like a panel, whether that looks like poetry, whatever that looks like, is about creating a safe space for yourself and for the people that you love.
For me, I would say pride is a double-edged sword. I think it's an incantation to some extent, where you are speaking to yourself and presenting outward everything that's inside. But I think it's a call to action, I think, for yourself first, and then for the world second. But then I think the other side of it, it's colonization. I think that pride is rooted, has a deep, deep, deep history of racism and colonization. And I think that for people of color, in this case, speaking very personally as a Black person, I think it's us trying to find home in unfamiliar territory.
So true. Very well said. Like all of what you guys were saying, Asha, like not everybody is out. So sometimes, you know, you do need that permission, sometimes from others that, you know, have walked that line and kind of shared that story. I mean, also with the Black Lives Matter movement, this is a huge time for all of these things to shed light and to continue that momentum moving forward with it all. And I mean, I guess with that in mind, with all of that, and with the momentum and the education that's happening and the introspection that's happening all around the world, what do you think that impact could be for the LGBTQ community moving forward? And what do you hope to see come from it moving forward?
Can I clarify the question you're saying about the movement that's happening, like the uprising that's happening right now?
Yeah.
So the uprising and the movement, like the Black Lives Matter movement, is inherently a Black queer movement, right? Like, so the folks that started it are Black queer people. The folks that are on the front lines are Black, queer, trans, disabled folks who are on the front line standing, right? Like they are doing that work, like protesting. So it is inherently a Black queer space. And so I think what gets to happen now moving forward is that the erasure of Black queer folks doesn't happen on either end, right? So like to Kenneth's point, pride has been co-opted and capitalized, and a lot of fictionalized characters around like the Stonewall riots have happened, and people forget that Marsha P. Johnson was at the root of the Stonewall riots, right? And so people dismiss Black queer people. In a lot of ways, we're like this mystical, magical being, and we don't really exist to a lot of folks, right? And so I think moving forward, folks get to see that on the front lines of this movement, there are Black, queer, trans, lesbian, gay, bisexual folks who are on the front lines doing that work. And we cannot be erased. So I think that is what happens moving forward, and those are the conversations that we get to have about our people being the foundation of this movement, and most movements actually.
Definitely, so true. Total
So
transparency.
it's interesting, just to kind of jump in, because I was going to say something that I think was a little different, but I think that Patience, your input is kind of reshaping my thoughts about it. But I was going to say, prior to Patience bringing up some excellent points, is that I want to build a wall. I hate to say this for triggering reasons, but I want to build a Trump-sized wall in between Black Lives Matter and the LGBTQ movement, or the gay movement. And the reason why I want to do that, intersectionality, knowing that I can't do that for the reasons Patience just mentioned, by the way. But the reason why I want to do that is because the gay rights movement has a history. Even the term pride, I'm gonna use borrowed to be nice, has come from Black people organizing and activating their communities. Every single time Black people begin to organize about and addressing inequalities in America, the gay rights movement borrows all of and borrow without permission, by the way, all the terminologies, all the ideologies, all of the strategies, all of the sweat equity, everything from these communities to push agenda or push a movement that does not include often Black people. And so I will not want the Black Lives Matters movement to be just another example of the gay rights movement trying to figure out how can it borrow from this movement to advance its work while not including Black people. And just to kind of piggyback on that, so that way I'm not sounding too mysterious, some examples would be, again, the term pride, which comes from, first it was, Black pride was before the gay pride. Two, I would say that like the rainbow, the Rainbow Push Coalition was the first organization pushing rainbows. So the Black community was using rainbows as a symbol of organizing and unity for civil rights movements before the LGBTQ community adopted it as their logo. I mean, the list goes on and on. Every time Black people say, this is what we want to do to push and organize, the gay rights movement has adopted those things without permission to symbolize their movement. So here's another time when a Black movement is on the horizon, and I just don't want the gay people figuring out like, this is how we can borrow from this to advance our rights while not including Black people or lifting up Black people in the process.
I really understand that perspective. And it's so interesting to be, Black people and also be members of the LGBTQ community, knowing that both movements, are huge topics, and knowing that right now, it is super imperative the Black Lives Matter movement is, right now in danger. And there are also, LGBTQ community members that are also in danger. So it's a very interesting intersectionality and topics that, not everybody's gonna share the same views on. And that's, kind of where this conversation, is important, to share perspectives and to share, kind of like your ideas and your thoughts around these topics. And knowing that having both or identifying as both, these are the conversations that we're having within ourselves, and now being able to have with others is super important. Not that we'll have an answer, but we'll have more insight and more perspective to kind of move forward with, and, you know, deciding whether we want to completely separate the two, combine the two, you know, have one and have the other. However we feel personally we want to involve ourselves in each movement, I think is a great thing. Asha, did you have anything you wanted to add to this particular question?
Oh no, I just added everything that they said to this paper right here. So I'm taking notes so I can do further research on these things, because I am not enlightened or aware of all of these things, you know. So
Yeah,
great
definitely.
answers. I love
Sharing of knowledge. Definitely. Awesome. Got to share knowledge. Knowledge is power, for real. So
yes.
I'm grateful for these perspectives, honestly. And just thinking about knowledge and kind of what you've learned over the years, being a person who identifies as a member of the LGBTQ community. Not everybody is out, like we said before. Not everybody is outwardly identifying as that, and some people are. Is there something that you could share with anyone around what you've learned on this journey, or like coming out, that has helped you in the work that you're doing right now, or in your career at all, specifically, that you could share?
For me, I've had to come out. And when I say come out, I mean more so come out to my family, because I've always felt out in high school. I've always felt out in college, in my adult life. But I've had to come out about like 3 times to my family. And I think that owning who you are and being brave enough to take that ownership is very important in being an artist, because it's another practice of not conforming. And when you think about growing up being gay, I'll just use gay for the whole umbrella term, because that's what it was for me. When you grow up being gay in your family, there is this notion of conforming to be straight. If that's all of their views, if you've overheard something, if you've gone to church with them and heard the pastor saying something, if you've just been around, you know. So I think that practicing being brave with just being comfortable with yourself also helps you in the artistic world, because there is so much music out here. There is so much of the same. There is so many industry folk saying that this is what it's supposed to be. This is what it's supposed to sound like. Try and adapt to this, when we know that that's impossible, because there is only one us, you know what I'm saying? So having that bravery to come out, as well as having that bravery to just be yourself within your artistry. Now, it's a different question if you want to put your lifestyle into your artistry, because you may not always talk about your relationships. You know, music is so wide, but I think it helps with just being able to express yourself fully and not worry about what somebody else is going to say, if a label's going to call you back, if someone's going to buy your album, if your parent is going to hug you. At the end of the day, you still have the option of chosen family. At the end of the day, you still have the option of staying true to your work, which will ultimately get accepted, because it is a separate light. It is a separate vibe. It is a separate groove. So.
Yes, I love that. Absolutely right. Bravery, practicing that, because at the end of the day, you are you, regardless of who you choose to love, how you choose to identify, and being able to stand, you know, in that regardless is a huge, huge thing that will help regardless, and in many facets, many careers.
And conforming isn't always I'm sorry, and conforming isn't always going to last. Like conforming is temporary. Conforming will eventually lead to deforming because it's not you. So you're gonna burn out. You're gonna get tired of putting on that face. You're gonna get tired of bringing a boy home and pretending like you about this life. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, I'm yes to all of that. And also, I think I recognize too, I'm learning, and it's taken me a while to learn this, that like coming out is a privilege too, right? Like coming out is a luxury for us. And I am blessed. Like I am super blessed that I was able in myself, like to say, and I've been out for 16 years now. So I came out when I was sophomore in high school, and I realized, which is something that I didn't know, being from DC, there are a lot of gay people here, a lot of queer people, a lot of folks that are out. And that this is, this is a place, and like being in a big city is a place where you can be out and you can like create your chosen family and you can do all of the things. And I've realized that not everybody, feels like they have that privilege and that luxury. And we are like super blessed, and I'm grateful to be surrounded by the people that I love, and also understand that that's not everybody's journey, right? Like that's not everybody has the same ability to even be true to themselves. I know there are a lot of things that people lie to themselves about, right? Mm-hmm. And that's safety for them. And so it's not always okay. It's not always the right thing to do, but sometimes it's the safest choice to make. And so I think about that, as well as the piece of being, as well as a part of being brave, because not only is it a privilege and a luxury, there are like some brave parts of like coming out and owning yourself and being who you are no matter what. And I'm grateful for that as a privilege, and grateful for that as like a luxury, because I'm dope, right? Like we are dope. We are amazing. We are phenomenal people. And I've had to have that conversation with my family. I've had to have that conversation with my mom around like how your queerness doesn't stagnate you. Like your queerness has nothing to do with your ability to be and also to thrive. And I've also had to tell people that I've used privilege to explain my queerness, right? When I was in college, there were a lot of older lesbian women that I kind of just gravitated towards. They were doctors, they were lawyers, they were all of these things. And I found myself ashamed of me for having to explain, for using that to explain queerness as being okay, right? Like queerness comes in all shapes or forms. It doesn't have to have a PhD to be valid. Like your queerness does not have to have a PhD to be valid. And so like I'm just learning a lot about the privileges and what people think about, oh, you can't be a bum and be queer. You can't be like that is not, that's like there's no hierarchy. There should be no hierarchy of queerness, and I should not have to over exceed in order to live my life. So those are things that I think about. I feel like that's a lot, but those are things that I think about when I think about like the coming out process and having to talk to people and having to explain my existence and debate my existence with people. Like it sucks. It's also a privilege and a luxury to even be able to do that, right? Yeah. So
I totally feel you. And even like in your artistry, getting out of the habit of trying to validate yourself or trying to make people see you as worthy. Is definitely a practice that you're in. Just being queer is just something that you get that practice in, and that gratitude, being humble, being like, I know that not everybody has this ability, and not everybody has a space and support that I have, and that translates to all facets of life, and just allows for more blessings to flow, like, because not everybody has the same story.
Absolutely.
Kenneth, anything you'd like to add? No pressure.
I will be very brief. So one, I want to, if anybody happens to see my screen when I'm not talking, you see me swatting mosquitoes. I'm trying to find a quiet place, and the mosquitoes was home here first, apparently. So I'm in their space, and they don't like me here, or maybe they love me here. I don't know.
No, they do.
But so just you see me swatting and turning, and you see everything changing as I'm wrestling mosquitoes. But I'll just add that coming out and welcoming people in are different, and that you get to choose both. You get to choose when you decide you want to share your truth, and you also get to decide how much of that truth you share with who. And I say that as a person who's gender non-conforming, and a person who's also homosexual, is that there are times and spaces where I feel completely um, like it's necessary for me to share, and times where I feel like it's not necessary for me to share. So that sometimes I'm in the barbershop and I'm like, this ain't the time and space for me to be a martyr for the rainbow flag. This ain't the time. I want my shape up and I want to go home and eat. Like, and I'm not going to choose this moment to do that. But there's other times I remember. I'll tell a very brief story and I'm done. Is my first time ever being a teacher. I was an educator for many years, but my very first year teaching, I was always a poet. So I decided to start by doing a poem in the morning assembly. And throughout the day, at some point throughout the day, a young man came to me, sixth grader, came to me and said, "Hey, are you the one who did the poem?" I said, "Yes, that's me." He said, "Can I share a poem with you?" And I said, "Absolutely." This is in the hallway, me walking, to my next class. And he began to read a poem. The poem was called "My First Kiss." I remember it. This was about 10 years ago. It was called "My First Kiss," and it's a sixth grader's poem. I'm not sure if you know sixth graders' poems, but all sixth graders' poems are equal. They're all created equal. And so this is a sixth grader's poem. And so he reads the poem, and at the end of the poem, you discover that he kissed the boy. And then he asked me, what did I think about this poem? And I had to tell him it was the best poem I ever heard in my entire life. Because that's what that moment needed, right? And I was shocked that he decided that he was that comfortable 10 years ago to share this with a stranger in the hallway. But I had to tell him that that was the best poem ever, right? And then at the end of the day, the administrators and other teachers kind of got, met with me in the office. It was like, so how was your first day? And what was it like? And the only I could talk about was that encounter in the hallway. And I saw how so many people were like, oh, that's horrible. So many children are confused. He's way too young to know that he likes boys. I would have called his mother. And this was the response I got from the other educators. And in that moment, I realized that as much as I'm not saying you don't have to choose to be a martyr, but there's absolutely some times where your presence is necessary. It's absolutely necessary. And so I just say that coming out is and I'm just thankful that the young man, read the poem to me in the hallway and not one of the other educators. So I'll just say that, not to like pushing what's coming out. I'm just saying that we have a responsibility to ourselves first, for sure, but we have to understand that there's so many people out there who will require something of us at some point. And when we feel ready, we have to answer the call.
Love that. You're absolutely right. That was an amazing way to sum it all up. Because at the end of the day, most of us go into our artistry because we feel called to do so, because it's something within us that kind of has pulled us into that arena. So definitely listening to that inner voice and being aware of the things that are around you that you can use your gifts to uplift and to support others is huge. So totally. And that kind of like is a great segue into just seeing if you guys have any resources that you'd like to recommend, because this process can be a taxing one and it can be hard for a lot of people. Even that little boy who, felt comfortable enough sharing that with you. Do you guys have any kind of resources that you'd like to recommend for anyone that is either, you know, seeking therapy or looking for housing or funding for projects or events or anything like that that is pertaining to the LGBTQ community at all?
So slightly, this is also happens to be a shameless plug, but I work for an organization called Makers Lab DC. I'm the director of programs for that organization, and it is a organization for Black queer folks. We used to throw parties. That used to be our thing, to throw parties and also to create cultural experiences, like to celebrate Audre Lorde. Now we shifted into doing this thing called Black in Space. So Black in Space started out as a pride celebration that we had in May, and it turned into something incredible. It turned into like a space, and it's kind of creating a culture. And on the website for Black in Space, there's a list of resources specifically for to find Black queer therapists. So if you are looking for a Black queer therapist, you don't have to be Black or queer to want to find a Black queer therapist. You can also support Black queer therapists, right? And psychiatrists and folks that do that work. So I would say definitely look at our website, which is BLK, the letter N, space.com. And there's a vast list of resources that was put together by one of the social workers at Whitman Walker Clinic, which is in DC. And and she did an amazing job putting this together, right? And so that list of resources there, therapy for Black girls, for my Black folks who are out there looking for places to find community. And so also I think to this point, I would love to look up resources, because I don't know a lot of resources for all of us as a queer community. I do know specifically a lot of resources for Black queer folks to find therapy and support. And I had Downlink. I don't know if y'all know about Downlink, but I had Downlink to find community. The kids don't have that anymore, but there are some resources, and maybe Kenneth has more from being at GLCCB and having more resources and access to those things.
Yeah, that was amazing though. Thank you for that as well. And all these resources will be shared in a follow-up email as well. So if you don't catch it or you haven't seen it in the chat, definitely we'll be sending it out. So don't worry. But Kenneth, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll just add, I mean, there's lots of resources, but I will say that the easiest way to access the abundance that is the resources being available. Now, I'm saying the word like abundance. Abundance does not mean that we have resources for every area of interest or need, sadly, but there are lots of things still available nonetheless. And so I would say go to pridecentermd.org. And so the Pride Center of Maryland, they have one of the programs they have called what's called Peer Navigators. See that, y'all? Y'all saw the mosquito try to get me? All right, so the devil's busy. Okay, so so Pride Center of Maryland, they have a group of peer navigators, about 3 individuals who work on staff, who's responsible just helping people navigate resources. So it doesn't matter how small, how major, how large the need might be, you're able to call there and get connected to any resource that's made available, at least in Maryland. And if you're out of Maryland, they might be able to connect you to an organization that has a similar program in another state, another city. So again, at least when I was the ED there, I'm a little out of touch since I resigned to become a full-time artist. But anything from I'm looking to figure out a safe way to date, right? We're looking at something like that, and that might seem frivolous, but in a world where like gay bars are closing down, and especially with individuals who are our elder population. I use elders. I know that for some people, elder is triggering, but from an African lens, elders are it's a positive, affirming word that I'm not ready to throw away. So for our elders, a lot of them lost their peers during the AIDS epidemic, for instance. And so isolation and loneliness is a real thing. Like it's a real critical thing. And so helping people connect just to hang out, meet friends. Those are like, something as simple as that, or if you need housing or access to, grants or scholarships, access to, mental health therapists. I mean, everything on the spectrum, they can help you connect. So I would say absolutely utilize them. They're trained to help you access the resources that you need.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Asha, do you have any resources or ways to access resources that you would like to share?
Talk to your friends, ask what they do. A lot of my friends, I have not known that they have been resources this whole time, but I would just say, have conversations with your friends and get to know them and see how they can be a resource to you, and see how they can connect you with other folks outside of, the basic stuff that we know, Black in Space and Pride Center, Maryland. So
true. Absolutely right. And like your network is your chosen family. You know what I mean? So I guess on that path, being an LGBTQ plus artist and creative, how did you find your community? Like, how did you find your tribe? How did you find that group of people? And anybody that's like searching for their community, do you have any suggestions on how to do that, or any stories around how you found your community?
As an artist, my quick story, I started off with a queer band, the Culottes. So that was one of my first introductions into me being an adult, like after college, outside of going to like the gay parties in college and stuff like that, like what else was in the city. So I joined with the Culottes, and as an artist, especially if you're out, you have to keep on playing. And you have to bring your friends to the shows, and you have to tell them to bring their friends to the shows. A lot of the work is, at least for BOOMCLAK, like a lot of the groundwork, a lot of our success has been from word of mouth. And that's only because we did every show. We said yes to everything. As an artist, you grow from that. But we said yes to everything. And you talk to your fans and you stay connected with them. And eventually it does build. And whatever the culture is around your music, whatever the vibe is around your music, that becomes just as attractive. Our very first show, I think it was like each of our partners were in the audience. It was like one or two people in the audience. And it was like that for a long time. It was just our partners coming to shows. But it grows from that. And you just have to stay connected. You have to talk to your fans. You have to individually text people to come to your shows and hope that you get at least 2. So the ones do grow to 10s, the 10s do grow to 100s. Yeah, and people that come to your shows, they're connected elsewhere. Like we got connected to Lee, who runs Maker's Lab, and that has put us on bigger stages only because Lee came out to shows, and Lee is in a whole nother position that we didn't even know about. You know what I'm saying? So it sounds like something that we've heard before a million times, but it is actually the truth. And it's like the dirt works. Instagram don't work all the time. These algorithms be fucked up. You already know. Social media does not work all the time. You have to send 300 text messages, make 300 calls to get people out to your album release. Because that's how it's going to build. And then by doing that, it's like, oh, BOOMCLAK, they're so personable. Like, she asked me for my number. She reminded me that we had tickets. Like, she's cool. I have a friend in her. I can trust her. She's real. She's down to earth. And that helps build the culture because those people tell those types of stories. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's cool. Go ahead. Talk to her. Take a picture. Blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. So
true. So you build the community through connection with the fans.
Asha does most of that work.
Gotta have a balance. You gotta have a balance.
Asha does a lot of that peopling. I like people most of the time, but then sometimes I'm like, people is gonna sing and run off the stage. That's me. I'm like,
Patience keeps them at the shows.
Yeah,
the shows. Patience's voice keeps them at the shows.
Yeah, they come to the shows for Asha. They stay for the duo. Okay.
Jesus Lord.
Just kidding. No. So again, I will always be indebted to the website before Facebook that was Downlink. Okay, I built a lot of my community on Downlink. Still got friends to this day on the internet. I was one of those children who made friends behind the computer.
Real?
Yes, absolutely. A nerdy, weird child that made friends talking about cartoons because that's what I was into and still am. But I think I love cartoons. But I think just finding your community outside of just being queer too, finding your community and people that like the same stuff that you like can be really helpful because you don't know, like, queer people exist across all platforms of life. There are goths, emo, people into anime, cosplay. There are there are like hardcore hip hop heads who are queer. Like, finding your community and also finding the safe spaces inside of that place where you can interact with queer folks is helpful too. Like, queer people do literally everything. And so connecting with folks that do the things that you like to do will help you to find the queer folks in that community, I think. Yeah, this is a weird time. Like, we're in a weird space where, like, a lot of the bars are getting shut down, a lot of the places are getting shut down. So finding safe space to build community, it can be difficult. But I think spaces like this, like, see who's in the chat. Like, take advantage of the fact that there are people in the chat room who are interacting with each other. Do a quick ASL, age, sex, location. You know, that you remember AIM, the chats? Because I feel like this is a very AIM, AOL,
Definitely.
Time. We might want to change that up now, like age, gender pronouns, location. Like, we're in different time now, but we can shift those things and make them our own. And so, like, just when you go to events, see who's in the chat function, see who's in the place and connect with them. Find ways to connect with folks that you feel are interesting and want to connect with.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Definitely. Kenneth, any additions on how to find your community?
Yeah, I'll just say all these anecdotes I have. But so I just want to say a quick story. So I remember in both ways about connecting, but so I have a habit, and I'm kind of even doing it now, and it's built off of being desperate for a tribe. And so I'm part of the spoken word community. More specifically, I'm part of the national slam community. And so I would compete nationally and internationally in poetry slams. And I found myself, and everybody from the Baltimore slam team can tell you this, I found myself consistently being protested. And the issue was, I was the guy pretending to be gay to win a slam, is what people would assume, because I guess I'm what's considered masculine presenting. And so people would assume that I was heterosexual or cis hetero, and I'm not cis nor heterosexual, but that's what's assumed when you meet. And so the queer community just did not make a space for me at all. And so I found myself trying to tailor more to the queer community by trying to increase my femininity. I was like, let me be more fabulous, because that way they'll know that I'm part of their community and they'll let me in. Like, I'll get a card if I'm more flamboyant. And so I kept trying to be that. So I learned how to soften my voice sometimes, and just how to hold my elbows. it was weird, things I was doing to try to figure out how do I fit into the queer community, because they literally would protest me at slams to the straight guy who was pretending to be gay for the slam. So I had a really weird relationship with the community trying to find my tribe. So eventually I gave up on trying to be part of the queer community, and more so decided to tell my truth everywhere and anywhere, and anyone who decided that they appreciated it could flock. And I didn't care if you were queer, I didn't care if you were heterosexual, I don't care if you trying to figure it out, I don't care how you identify. If you can relate to my truth and my art, then we can start from there.
Yeah.
Definitely. Love that. And you know your community will come to you when you're living authentically. So totally, I love that. We are like running down on time. It's making me so sad. But I just wanted to, I guess, continue thinking about the fact that, like, you know, Pride is a time where a lot of us do see other people who look like us, or at least we find joy in knowing that if I go to this Pride parade, at least majority of the people that are going to be around are going to be LGBTQ plus and allies, so you feel safe in that space. So thinking of Pride, like how, BOOMCLAK specifically, how did you all break into the Pride event performance? And Kenneth, if you could shed light on like what artists could potentially think about when they're trying to apply to perform at Pride shows, or what, you know, what everyone is looking for, or how they can kind of present themselves in that way. Any light you guys can shed on that?
Asha, go first.
I don't know how any of this stuff happens. I know, and I'm saying that honestly, like, we say yes to everything, so it's about being visible, and I think that we're both very comfortable in saying she in a song, or saying her, and just living our lives. So yes, there is that privilege, there is that advantage, there is that comfort there. But it's legit been word of mouth. So that's the only thing that I can think of, is because we was doing so many shows, we had residencies, so we were meeting all different types of folks. Hey, I run this. Hey, I'm on the team for AFRAM, you know, like everybody comes to a show and they approach you and you take them seriously up to the point to where you don't. And most times, if they're on some type of board or in some type of leadership position, then that's a done deal, because they saw you and they want to help project your voice more. So that's all I can think of. You gotta,
say
you
yes
gotta
to everything.
throw yourself out there.
Say yes to everything is such an interesting strategy. It is. I don't know. I don't know if it has worked it has worked. Clearly, it has worked.
Patients don't know what I've been through, okay? Because I've had to be the one to say yes.
I have been teaching Asha to say no recently, because we gotta say no sometimes. But she's right, you know, do things that are out of your comfort zone too, like that are safe but out of your comfort zone. Even stuff you don't feel like you are ready for. Like if you are put in a space to be there, you are ready for it. Like if the opportunity has opened itself up to you and people see you, make yourself ready for it. And I think that is something that we do, because we have been on stages and we've been like, with people like, how are we here? What are we, like, we're opening up for Badu, like how did we get here, you know? And so there have been a lot of moments like that, but saying yes and being open to all of the opportunities that happen has really been helpful. And yeah, also like they said, being your authentic self, being seen as a queer group has never been an issue for us, because that's who we are, right? Like that is who we are. And we don't necessarily say, hey, I don't want to be seen for my queerness. I don't want to see, these are all of our identities. Like we are a Black queer duo. These are just facts. And so because we, you know, step into those facts and like actually work with those things and know that is who we are, not for it to put us in a box, but to open us up to things. I think that has been important too. Like, Asha don't put on no dress, you know what I'm saying? Like, me and Asha dress differently, right? And people see that. And that is something that I love and admire about her. She is fly as hell in a suit, right? And so, like, that is a super, I think when people see us and see us being our authentic selves, they respect that.
I love that. Absolutely.
So I'm gonna try to be very brief. So again, running Pride parades and Pride festivals, and specifically my work has I always put myself in charge of booking all the talent for Pride. That was my favorite thing to do with Pride, book all the talent for Pride. I did that for like 3 years straight. And so really quickly, I would say tip number one is be visible. Typically for festivals, I've also been part of other festival committees as well. So being visible helps, because if someone on the committee is familiar with your work, then you already have a good chance of being selected, right? Because we're not all strangers. And so typically for entertainment committee for Baltimore Pride, it might be 7 to 8 of us on that particular committee that's reviewing all applications and trying to identify all the entertainment for Pride. So I would say being visible helps, because somebody in the committee probably came across you at some point. But don't just allow I love the saying yes to everything, but don't just allow that to be the end of the work. The second thing is to be proactive. I don't know if people have managers or whatever. Like, I manage 7 artists nationally, and we absolutely are about sending press kits to conferences and institutions. Like, you have to be proactive too. Yeah, 7. I manage 7. And so you have to be very proactive and making sure that they send you. And I'll say this, getting booked is easy for the most part once you're a professional established artist. How much money you get booked for is on the back end about how professional it is. If I can just say, oh, a friend of a friend said you was dope, I can book you. I'm gonna book you at a low number. I'm gonna book you at a low number because I have a small budget for the most part, right? I want the budget to last, but the people who seem very professional, where I'm talking to their management team, I'm seeing their contracts, I see your social media, you have X amount of numbers, then already I'm adding a 0 to the price. I'm adding a 0 to what, so I would say that to be about your business as well. So getting booked is definitely cool, but also make sure that you're proactive, that you have your website is polished, your press kits are looking good, that you're representing yourself either with you or your management team, that you're negotiating your prices. And absolutely, I've been flown out, paid $5,000 to do 1 poem, and plus hotel and airfare. Like, just being able how to navigate and negotiate, and represent yourself. So I would say be very visible for sure, but then also be very proactive.
Awesome, I love
and
that.
Hit every pride. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And professional, because they take you serious, they're gonna pay you serious.
Right.
And so saying no sometimes on 2020 might mean say no to something, a free gig 2020 might mean you'll get the paid gig 2021. Because they know they couldn't afford you this year, but they could have probably put you in a budget for next year. Whereas if they had you this year, they don't need you next year, they already had you. Now they're not gonna pay you.
Awesome, definitely great insights. I hope y'all artists are listening, because this is some gems from behind the scenes. So as we wrap up, I just want to say that this was an amazing conversation, and we had one question. Well, we had a few questions come in about how you feed your mental health during, all of this, being a LGBTQ plus person and a person of color during this time. And do you also feel like your why is greater now? Like, why you do what you do is greater now with that in mind?
I feel like for me, feeding my mental health, again, looks like watching cartoons. It looks like writing. Sometimes it looks like chilling. It looks like taking a break from social media, from the news, and just we have more time, a little bit more time. A lot of us have more time to kind of just sit and be with ourselves, which is sometimes really helpful, and sometimes it is not, right? And so I take breaks and I talk to myself, and I like do a lot of communicating with me. But I don't think my why is greater. I think my why is more visible now. I've been Black and queer for a long time, so this is not new, right? Like, this is not a new thing that's going on in the world. It's weird because we're in a pandemic and racism like hopped on the stage like Lil Mama at the VMAs, but you know, white supremacy does not chill, does not take a break. Like, even in a pandemic, like, can you chill? But I think for me, the why is more visible, but it also looks like me being able to take breaks and ask for help and ask for support, or if I don't have it, to like reach out to somebody and ask for help.
Yeah, definitely taking breaks. And for me, lately, what has worked for me is going back in time, like nostalgic things. Like, me and Patience do love cartoons. At our last show, or our last situation, you know, I put a little Hey Arnold on my keyboard because Hey Arnold brings me happiness. I have Ren and Stimpy right here all the time. Like, they're right here. I recently started like buying Legos and building Legos of rocket ships that will take me to Black in space. My imagination, I've been like heavy in it, still aware of what's popping, still taking notes so I can do my own research about what's going on, like not being ignorant to anything, but taking those breaks, finding joy in other things outside of myself because we naturally have it, and continuing to just dibble dabble into new things, trying new ways of painting, trying new ways of creating music, not really being so, feeling like I have to force out creation, because we all know how that works. You know what I'm saying? When you force it, it's doo-doo, you know what I'm saying? So you have to, you know, be graceful with yourself, allow yourself time, because this is, it's traumatic. It's a traumatic experience. So yeah, definitely take those breaks and find that joy in whatever it is that makes you smile, that takes you away from things.
I'm just going to take notes and do everything they said. I'm going to actually watch Hey Arnold. I haven't watched it since I was like a kid. I think I'm going to do that. But I'm really extreme. So like, for me, it's like picking up and physically moving, like sometimes. And it's about putting myself in physical spaces. That's really big for me, where I feel at peace. And so like, big news is I'm moving to Africa in 6 months. In part to like decrease my proximity to this type of trauma that I'm tired, I'm done with. But for everybody else, that's for me. Like, I need to be in a place where I don't have to try to beg white people to love me. Like, I'm over that. I'm done that. I can't convince this country to love me and accept me. They won. You can have it. I'm out. Good luck. I'm going to Africa. But and if any racist people want to send me back to Africa, by all means, you can donate to my travel. Because I have to go. But so I mean, like, I'll just say, listen to yourself. Figure out what you need. You have to take time to really listen, and don't be afraid to give yourself what you need. You don't have to justify why you're giving yourself what you need. You don't have to convince no one or that this is no. Just give yourself what you need. And as much as we give, as artists, we give so much to our fans, to our communities, to people around us. And I'll say that I'm never gonna give you more than I give myself. So I have to give myself more because I need something to be able to give to others. And so if I spend 40 hours a week on your mission and your work and whatever, then how many hours I spend on mine? And so if you're spending 40 on yours, spend 41 on mine. So I'm always giving myself more than I'm giving anybody else because I deserve it.
You do.
Definitely. I totally agree. Thank you all for sharing. Like that was, I'm going to take some of those in as well. Like remembering those things that brought me joy during this time, because it is super traumatic and it is a huge array of emotions with, you know, Pride being celebratory, but, you know, Black Lives Matter really hitting hard personally. So it's just a lot that is going on and you do need that balance of self-care. So I really
and I'll have a spare bedroom if you want to come visit.
Yes, oh, it's happening. It's happening.
And we could be performing.
Yes, I can't wait.
And,
like,
I'm only going to South Africa where we can be ourselves. So
I got you. Yes, please. We're gonna connect, of course, because I have some South African connects for you as well. But anyway,
yes, I need more.
Yes. So thank you all. Like, thank you, Asha. Thank you, Patience. Thank you, Kenneth, for joining in on this conversation, gifting us your time and your perspective, because that's not a little. It's not little. It's not a small thing to gift your time and your effort and your energy. Thank you, everybody who tuned in, for giving us your energy as well, even virtually. I hope that this was able to give some sort of information, some sort of inspiration, love, joy, laughter, all of these things during this time that we need so very much. I'll also be sharing everything that we talked about with you all via email, and I'll also get a special little business kind of plug for all of our panelists to share with you guys some LGBTQ plus artists and businesses that they would like to kind of shout out. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Pride celebrations. You guys are amazing, like so amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, you're amazing.
Thank you.
And Patience and Asha, y'all are amazing. I'm gonna follow y'all on Instagram as soon as we hang off here. I need to follow y'all.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. Have an amazing week and happy Pride.
All right, love you guys.
All right, bye.